our tutorial session for today for updates in financial reporting standards. Yun po. Okay. So actually, no, when I was in my undergrad days in PUP, naging part na rin po talaga ako ng student council na nagtututorial. So, estudyante pa lang ako, parang uso naman yun, di ba? Yung nagtututorial na higher year level dun sa lower year level. So way back in my college days, ay ginagawa ko na talaga yun, no? And I'm very happy that I'm back here with the student council still providing tutorial sessions. So although it's virtual, no, it's something that is very nostalgic talaga. Okay, so I think without further ado, let's start our discussion for this morning. Maybe all of your questions will be accommodated at the end of the discussions or sessions for today. So we'll be discussing theories, both theories and problems, although we will be providing more emphasis on the theories kasi I suppose you are all good na in computing, no? Pero baka sa examination, dun tayo tamaan pag hindi tayo ready sa theories. Okay? So, yun po. Allow me to share my screen and let's start our discussion. Okay, so okay, mga kapatid, question number 1, can you hear me clearly po?
Yes po.
Yes po.
Okay, that's awesome. Question number 2, kita nyo po ba yung slide ko mismo?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes.
that's nice. And number 3, can you see the laser pointer that I'm using po dun sa ating slide?
Yes po.
Okay, so if all of those 3 questions are a yes, then let me start our discussion for this morning and we'll be having this until 12 noon. Okay, so feel free po na mag-butt in kapag ka bigla akong nawala or something or nagka-technical difficulty, bigla nawala. So just butt in agad kapag ka merong kailangan tayo adjustment na gawin. Okay, but I think we're ready to start. So for today po, our discussion will be a review of the techniques of cash to accrual basis of accounting. And also our theory discussions about the financial statements. We will be starting with your balance sheet and then your income statement, your changes in equity, and then cash flows and notes. And I have prepared 6 problems for us to discuss this morning. So as I've told you earlier, so I'm very much confident that you attending this session actually is, alam ko naman na medyo knowledgeable na kayo in calculations. So we also want to put emphasis on your theoretical discussions because baka dun po tayo tamaan sa exam. Baka magaling po tayo sa pagko-compute pero baka dun po tayo magka-problema kapag theories naman po yung tinanong sa atin. So it's better that we are both prepared in theory and in problems. Okay, sige, start na po ako. Let's first start with our techniques in converting cash basis records to accrual basis records. Now, in cash basis to accrual basis of accounting, always remember that on the basic premise of it, the cash basis of accounting is we recognize revenue when they are collected and the company is only recognizing expenses kapag ka po nagbayad ng company ng cash. Yun lang po. Kaya po siya tinawag na cash basis is because we only relate the transaction into its cash perspective. Okay? Kapag ka po may inflow, then that's a revenue. Kapag ka po may outflow, then that is diretso expenses. Now, always remember that in the pure cash basis of accounting, lahat po ng ating accounting records will only be related only to cash movements, whether there is an inflow or outflow of cash. Now, in the modified cash basis of accounting, medyo pinaghalo na po siya na cash basis of accounting at accrual basis of accounting. Because in the modified cash basis of accounting, although ang atin pong recording ng revenues and expenses is still based sa ating pong cash inflow at cash outflow, ang mangyayari po kasi is that lahat po ng resources natin na sa tingin natin will benefit more than one accounting period, it will now be capitalized as an asset. Unlike in pure cash basis, lahat ng cash outlay natin ay outright expense. Kaya po, wala nang masyadong company na gumagamit ng pure cash basis. And mag-cash basis man sila, nagkakaroon na rin tayo ng capitalization of asset. And actually, the those long-term assets that are being capitalized are also depreciated or amortized depending on the need. No? So ganun po yung nangyayari kapag modified cash basis. Now, in the accrual basis of accounting po, yan po yung kinasanayan natin na hindi po natin hinihintay ang cash inflow or cash outflow in order for us to record po yung ating revenues and expenses. You record revenues at the time they happen and you record also expenses at the time it is incurred. Now, dyan po ngayon nag-a-arise yung ating pong recording ng accounts receivable kapag ka po nag-render tayo ng service or tayo po ay nag-provide ng ating goods or nagbenta tayo ng goods sa ating customers pero hindi pa natin nare-receive po yung payment nila. And nagkakaroon naman po tayo ng payable kapag ka po yung binili nating inventories or hindi po kaya yung ating operating expenses ay hindi pa po natin nababayaran, no? So we will be recording payables for that. And syempre po, in the accrual basis of accounting, we are now recognizing as well prepayments, deferrals, depreciations, and amortizations, which needs adjusting entries at the end of the accounting period. Okay, now the mandate of our accounting standards is that the financial statements are being presented and prepared under the accrual basis of accounting, which further provides us the need that if in any case that the entity is using cash basis of accounting, their records should be transformed by an accountant into the records presented as accrual basis of accounting because the financial statements itself should be reported under the accrual basis of accounting. Now, let's review some techniques on how to transform our cash records to accrual records. Okay, so this is what we do. So you start with, so dito muna tayo sa ating cash to accrual sales. Okay, so ganito po muna. You start with your collections on accounts receivable. Basically, lahat ng cash collections. Ganun po yung nangyayari. Okay? And then, you need to add your ending balance of accounts receivable because that also represents the sales or service revenue. Basically, pwede rin service revenue, but this relate to sales kasi, no? So, this represent the sales na nangyari this year pero hindi pa natin nako-collect. Okay? You also have to re-add first lahat ng na-write-off nating AR kasi ang kukunin natin gross sales eh. So, yung totality ng sales kailangan natin makuha. Okay? Then, you also need to re-add your sales returns and allowances and discounts kasi kung hindi mo yan i-re-add, ang makukuha mong sales naka-net sales agad. Okay? But you have to deduct your beginning balance of accounts receivable because that relates to sales of the previous period na inabutan na lang ng new accounting period na hindi mo pa nakokolekta. Okay? But that doesn't relate to any sales this current accounting period. And that will be your sales on account. Then you add any sales that you did na talagang cash payment yun na receive mo for you to get your gross sales. Now, in computations in your examination, kapag ka po kayo ay tinanong na ng net sales, dediretso na lang po yung computation ng net sales on how you really do it. So that's gross sales minus sales returns and allowances and sales discount. Okay, so that's how you do your cash basis to accrual basis sales. We go to your purchases. Sa purchases naman po, ang usually tinitignan talaga natin dyan is your accounts payable. Okay? So any payments that you made during the period, i-add mo po lahat ng accounts payable at the end of the period. However, check nyo mabuti sa problem ha, kasi baka po yung accounts payable natin ay ginagamit siyang account sa lahat, hindi lang sa purchases natin, pati sa operating expenses. So you need to take note of that. However, if the problem is silent, then we can presume or assume that your accounts payable is only related to inventory purchases. No? So, ganun po yun. Okay? So, you need to add your accounts payable at the end of the period because that represents any purchases na hindi mo pabayad. And then you also have to re-add your purchase returns and allowances and discounts kung gross yung kukunin natin because likewise, dun sa diniscuss natin kanina sa sales, if you will not be re-adding this, then ang mangyayari is net purchases agad yung makukuha mo. Okay? And then you deduct po yung iyong beginning balance of accounts payable because those relate to your purchases in the previous period na inabutan na lang ng new accounting period na hindi pa siya bayad ng company. Okay? So those will be your total purchases on account and then you add your cash purchases and that will be your gross purchases. And that will also be your net purchases kung i-deduct mo na si purchase returns and allowances and purchase discount. Okay? So that is your presentation or calculation rather for your cash basis to accrual basis purchases. Let's now go to your depreciation. Pag working po tayo sa depreciation, working back lang po ang ginagawa natin. Either the T account approach or this approach. No? Kapag ka po kukunin natin na depreciation galing sa net balance ng PPE, is working back lang po tayo. Squeezing technique. Your ending balance of net PPE, add back your carrying value in any case that there is an asset disposal during the accounting period, and then you deduct po yung ating cost of new asset purchase and deduct also the beginning balance of your net PPE to get your depreciation for the period. However, if the only information available is your beginning and ending balances of accumulated depreciation, you just have to work on na kailangan maisip nyo din na syempre, upon disposal of an asset, meron din po tayong tinatanggal na portion ng accumulated depreciation. So any differences from that will be your depreciation for the period. Now, for your operating expenses, this is what you do. Kung ano man po yung cash payments na meron ka during the period, ganito po ang iisa-isahin natin. I want you to understand the rationale why we are adding and subtracting these items, and I don't want you to do it the kabisote style that you just do it like plus prepaid beginning plus accrual ending minus prepaid ending minus accrual beginning. You should only do that if you already understand why it's being added or subtracted. I don't want you to do it like that way na medyo kabisote style. So aalisin natin yung ganong technique sa atin, no? What I want you to understand is the reason behind why are we adding or subtracting this. So this is how we do it. Ganito po muna. Lahat po ng expenses relating to your operating expense, that will be your starting point. Now, bakit po i-add natin yung beginning balance ng prepaid expenses? Kasi we can assume na at the beginning of the year, prepaid expense siya. So baka at the end of the period, siya po ay expense na or used portion na or expense portion na siya. Okay lang na i-add mo muna lahat kasi later on naman, i-check natin yung ending balance ng prepaid expense eh. So add mo muna lahat ng beginning balance ng prepaid expense kasi we should expect na baka at the end of the period, ito ay ma-expire na. Okay? So, ganun yung mindset natin. Kaya mo i-add yung beginning balance ng prepayment mo. The next thing you add is your ending balance naman ng accrual. Bakit naman ending balance? As you know, an accrued expense is an expense relating to the accounting period today, pero hindi pa po siya nababayaran ng company. Pero expense siya this period. So any ending balance of that should also be added to get your accrual basis operating expense. Okay? Now, punta tayo dito. Bakit natin i-deduct yung ending balance ng prepaid expense? Ang ending balance po ng prepaid expense represent assets. Diba? Asset pa yan eh. Prepayment pa yan. Hindi pa siya nagagamit. Hindi pa siya na-use. Hindi pa siya na-expire. So, hindi siya expense. Kailangan mo siya i-deduct. Okay? You also have to deduct any beginning balance of your accruals because ang accruals po at the beginning of the period relates to expenses in the previous accounting period na inabutan na lang ng new accounting period na hindi pa nababayaran. So, kumbaga, ang hinihintay na lang natin sa kanya payment ng company. Pero as to recording of expense, na-record na talaga siya as expense in the previous accounting period. Ang hinihintay na lang natin payment, inabutan na lang siya ng new accounting period natin. Kaya i-deduct mo siya. Okay? So pag naintindihan nyo na yon, pwede nyo nang gawin yung kabisote style na plus prepaid beginning plus accrual ending minus prepaid ending minus accrual beginning. Okay? Because you already understand why it works or how it works. Okay? So yun po yun. So you start with that and then you end up with your accrual basis operating expense. Now, on the similar manner, we also talk about your other revenues. As you know, meron po tayong mga revenues na like rent or interest, pwede nyo pong gamitin yun dito. Or pwede rin po natin gamitin to in any case na meron po kung ang company ay naka-service revenue, hindi naman sales, hindi naman merchandising or manufacturing. So pwede nyo gamitin to for service revenue as well. Okay? Your starting point is lahat po ng cash na na-receive nyo galing sa customers nyo. Yun nga lang, yung mga cash kasing na-receive nyo from those customers, it's either talagang galing po siya sa current accounting period na service revenues mo or other revenues mo, or baka po siya ay collection na lang galing po sa previous period transactions. So ito naman po yung ating magiging adjustments. You add any deferred revenue at the beginning of the period because as you know, deferred revenue at the beginning of the period, baka po siya ay earned na at the end of the period. I-add mo muna lahat kasi later on, ma-minus naman po natin kung sakaling may naiwan pang deferral at the end of the period. Okay? So baka ma-earn na kasi yan, so add mo muna lahat. Okay? You also add your ending balance of accrued revenue. Bakit? Yan po ay revenue this period na hindi pa nagko-collecta ng company yung payment. Okay? So, dahil naka-cash basis records ka, hindi mo pa na-record yun talaga, no? Kasi nihintay mo nga lang yung cash collection eh. So, parang ganon. Okay? So, the ending balance of your accrued revenue should be added because that represents any revenues this period. Yun nga lang, di pa na-receive yung cash. You deduct also your deferred revenue at the end of the period because that is still a liability. Hindi pa po natin yan hindi pa natin na-earn rather. Hindi pa po natin siya na-earn, kaya deferred revenue pa rin siya at the end of the period, hindi siya dapat kasama sa iyong accrual basis na other revenue. Okay? And then, i-deduct mo po yung beginning balance ng accrued revenue kasi yan po ay revenues from the previous accounting period na hindi mo pa nare-receive. Kaya inabutan na lang siya ng current accounting period mo na hindi pa nare-receive. Pero, again, that relates po kasi sa revenues ng previous period. So, hindi siya dapat kasama ngayon. Kaya mo siya i-minus. Kasi baka yung na-receive mong cash dito, related pala sa collection mo galing dito. So, hindi siya dapat kasama sa revenue mo this period. Okay? And that's how you do your other revenues. Okay, so meron din po tayong tinatawag na capital maintenance approach in getting profit. So you start with you compare rather the ending and beginning balance of your equity, and any increase or decrease in equity will be readjusted to your withdrawals. It will be re-added and deduct any additional investments made to get your profit or loss at the end of the period. You already know this since your first year days because may mga nagiging tanong naman sa inyo dati sa problems to get your net income using the beginning and ending balances of equity. So I don't think that this is very much hard for you guys. Okay. Sige. Maybe I can open the floor for a little question bago tayo dumiretso na sa FS ng tuloy-tuloy. Any questions po kaya? Maybe let's allow 5 minutes of Q&A for the cash to accrual basis. I'm opening the floor for your question. Anyone, anyone po, pwede magsalita. You can butt in and just open your microphone and maybe your camera so that we can also see you and drop nyo yung question nyo. And let's allow 5 minutes for that. Mukha naman naintindihan nila. Wait, question mga kapatid. Kita nyo po, di ba kita nyo yung slides ko, pero kita nyo rin po ba yung participants sa gilid ng slides ko or nakaseparate yung participants sa gilid ng ng screen nyo? Talagang, what I mean is, yung slides lang talaga yung kita nyo ng buo.
Yes po, slides lang.
Yes po.
Slides lang. Okay. Kala ko kita nyo rin yung yung participant sa gilid kasi yung calculation natin mamaya baka hindi nyo makita. So, kita na nyo naman po yung slides totally ng buo.
Yes po.
Okay, that's nice. Sige po. Any questions po regarding the cash to accrual basis of accounting?
Guys, you can unmute or
Yeah.
chat your questions in the chat box.
Sige, open din tayo ng chat box at baka meron. Ay, napin. Teka, hindi ko makita yung chat box ko. Wait lang. Do we have questions in the chat box? Hindi ko makita eh.
Wala pa naman po, sir.
Okay, wala
Nasa
pa.
ano po siya, like sa taas po, yung
Ayun,
your
ito.
screen sharing tapos chat po.
Ayun, I can see it na. Okay. Chat. Wala pa naman. Okay. Sige, mukha naman naintindihan niyo ng mabuti. Sige, later, baka may maisip pa kayong questions later. Sige, didiretso na tayo sa FS kung ganon. I hope that you understand our discussion on cash to accrual basis. Didiretso na po ako sa lahat ng ating discussion for your financial statements. Okay? So, system check po ulit tayo. Can you again hear me clearly?
Yes po.
Okay, slides are okay? Can you see it in full?
Yes po.
And the laser pointer. Kita?
Yes po.
Okay, so now let's discuss your financial statements. We start for the theory and then I prepared just simple 6 items later for our problem discussion. Okay, so 9:30 pa lang pala. So bagalan natin konti hanggang 12 pala tayo. No? So, sige, start tayo. Sige, dahil medyo maaga pa naman, so at least ma-expound natin yung mga dapat nyo talagang malaman na theoretical discussions. At least kasi yun nga, sabi ko sa inyo kanina, confident naman ako sa inyo na medyo okay na kayo sa computation. Baka tayo po ay may problema sa theory at baka sa theory pa kayo tamaan sa exam. So we put also emphasis din naman dapat sa inyong theory discussions. Okay, all of the things that I will be presenting you today are lifted from our accounting standards from IAS 1 presentation of financial statements and IAS 7 statement of cash flows. So, hindi po siya reworded. Talagang kinuha ko from the standard para ma-address natin ng maayos kung ano po talaga yung sinasabi sa standard. Okay? So, let's allow, sana, tingnan natin kung kaya yung ating 9:30 to 11 dito para 11 to 12 problems na lang tayo. Okay, pero kung we can end early naman or do we have more time for your questions, pwede rin naman. Okay, let's start. Now, okay. Paano ba to? Teka, ayusin ko yung ano nyo. Ayan, okay. General purpose financial statements are those that are intended to meet the needs of users who are not in a position to require an entity to prepare reports tailored for their particular information needs. Bilang accountant po, and that this is a constructive accounting class na tayo po ay gagawa ng financial statements. Your financial statements that you will be preparing for your clients in the future is called a general purpose FS. Bakit po siya tinawag na general purpose financial statement? Kasi po, yung mga gagamit nitong general purpose financial statements ay wala pong highly tailored special purpose, no? Para gamitin nila sa ibang bagay, no? Kaya po siya general purpose financial statements is because the readers or the users of these financial statements will only be using these financial statements for their general purposes at kung meron man silang specific purposes, sa kanila na lang yon. Pero as to our preparation of these financial statements, ang purpose niya is general lang. Okay? Kumbaga, it's for everyone to see. Ganun po siya. Kaya po siya tinawag na general purpose financial statements. Kasi kung ang ating pong, if the users of these financial statements would demand the financial statements that are tailored for their particular information needs, then that becomes special purpose financial statements. Okay? Ganun po siya. General purpose financial statements, yun pala yun, naulit lang. So, financial statements are a structured representation of the financial position and financial performance of an entity. Main highlights po ng ating FS, although sinabi naman po sa IAS 1 that all financial statements should be presented with equal prominence. Tandaan nyo yan ha, financial statements should be presented with equal prominence. Okay? So, yun po. It is also a representation, or should I say, it's a structured representation ng financial position, what the company is now, and financial performance, how the company is doing. Kasi galing naman po doon, you can construct na the changes in equity. Dahil alam naman po natin ang ating changes in equity, ano po ba yung mga kasama doon? Net income and comprehensive income and all others contributions and distributions to and from owners. And any changes in your financial position is also presented in your statement of cash flow. Kaya nga po sinabi sa IAS 7 statement of cash flow, actually, ang dati pong pangalan ng IAS 7 ay hindi po talaga statement of cash flow. Statement of changes in financial position. Bakit po? Mamaya, makikita nyo, di ba, na ang ating cash flow is you really look for the changes, increases or decreases in the items in your balance sheet. Kaya po siya tinawag na statement of changes in financial position. Okay? So, ganun po yun. Now, basically, financial statements in itself are a structured representation ng kung ano na po ba ang company now, how is it doing, and it's their financial performance. Kamusta sila financially? Are they profitable or are they not? Now, the objective of financial statements is to provide information about the financial position, financial performance, and cash flows of the entity. At hindi po yun natatapos doon. Kailangan po kita ng lahat ng kailangan gumamit at nangangailangan nun. Wide range of users in making economic decisions. And that roots back to the very definition of accounting, that we do accounting because we want to present information or financial information to the owners, users, and also sa ating pong external users of accounting information because they are using that para saan po? In decision making. Okay? Also, these financial statements show the results of the management's stewardship of the resources entrusted to it. May mga resources po na pinagpala ang isang company. These resources are being entrusted to the company. So, paano po siya naaalagaan ng company? Okay? 'Di ba? Pag sinabi pong stewardship, paano po siya napapangalagaan, napapangasiwanaan? Tama ba yung Tagalog ko? Paano po siya pinangangasiwaan? Paano ina-administer? Paano binabantayan? Paano inaalagaan? At paano nagagamit ng maayos? Okay? So, isa rin po siya sa nai-represent ng ating financial statements. The complete set of financial statements include the statement of financial position as at the end of the period, the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income for the period, the statement of changes in equity for the period, the statement of cash flows for the period, and any notes which will carry all of your explanations and significant accounting policies. Now, please take note very well of the terminologies that are being used in the standard. Kasi baka tanungin kayo ng true or false sa exam. Nakalagay, the complete set of the financial statements include a statement of financial position for the year ended. Tapos sagot kayo ng sagot, tinro nyo agad. Mali yun. Because as you know, the statement of financial position is not for the year ended. It is as at the period end. Because ang lahat po ng ating nire-report sa balance sheet ay cumulative amounts, di ba? Ng assets, liabilities, and capital. And all of those are real accounts. So, yung mga ganong wording, baka doon tayo maadulas ng konti sa exam. So, ingat po tayo doon. Baka sabihin sa exam, statement of financial position for the year ended, false po agad yon. Okay? And in the same manner, baka balik rin kayo, the statement of cash flows as at the end. So, hindi po ganun yon. Kasi ang chinecheck lang naman natin for the year na nangyari sa cash flow. So, ingat po tayo sa wordings. Okay? Also, IAS 1 presents to us na ang tamang pangalan daw po talaga ng statement of comprehensive income is statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. Yun po talaga yung name niya sa standard. However, we are given freedom in the standard na pwede po natin siyang tawaging statement of comprehensive income. Okay? So later on, pag-uusapan po natin yan pag nasa comprehensive income na po tayo. According to paragraphs 38 and 38A of IAS 1, kailangan daw po makapag-present tayo ng financial statements. Hindi lamang for a single year, but we should present it comparatively. We should present comparative information. Okay? As a minimum, the requirement of the standard is to present 2 statements of financial position, 2 income statements, 2 cash flows, and 2 changes in equity. And syempre, yung notes mo din dapat naka 2-year format. Comparative din. Okay. Lumalabas po ngayon na dahil comparative information, syempre with the exemption na kapag ka first year ng company, wala naman tayong magagawa doon, di ba? Syempre, pag first year ng company, hindi ka naman talaga makakapag-provide ng comparative information. However, ganito po yan ha, there is a requirement for a third balance sheet, 3 taon, you should present it 3 years, kung nagkakaroon po tayo ng restatements or kapag ka po nagkakaroon po tayo ng accounting policies na changes in accounting policy na kailangan nyo pong i-present retrospectively. Remember in your CFAS in IAS 8 na meron po tayong pag nag-change in accounting estimate, prospective lang ang effect. Pero kapag ka po change in accounting policy, like for example, changing FIFO to weighted average, mga ganun po natin, kailangan po nire-restate yung ating pong financial statements as if that accounting policy has been already been applied in the previous periods. Okay? So, nagkakaroon po tayo minsan ng 3 presentation ng balance sheet, 3 years talaga siya. No? And other information, kung nagkakaroon po tayo ng restatement ng FS or application and change in accounting policy na ang kailangan pong mangyari is ang presentation mo sa kanya retrospectively. Okay? Yung application mo ng new accounting policy mo is retrospective. Okay? So always remember that. We have the following general features of your financial statements. Siyempre, dapat po siya ay fairly presented at in compliance at yun nandun po talaga yung pagsunod po natin sa International Financial Reporting Standards. Okay? You also apply the continuity concept or yung ating pong going concern principle na the statements or the financial statements are being prepared with going concern assumption in mind that the continue will be continuing in that the company will be continuing in operations indefinitely. Hindi sila masasara. Wala silang iniisip na closure. Okay? Yun po. And then also, sabi nga po natin kanina, dapat po ang ating pong financial statements are prepared under the accrual basis of accounting. Consider din po natin yung materiality and aggregation. Materiality po kasi when an omission of an item will reflect or will result rather into a change in decision of the users of the FS. Okay? So, pagka po material, baka dapat i-present natin as a separate line item to contribute to the understandability of the FS. Aggregation naman po, kung similar nature lang naman, pwede mo na siyang i-aggregate. Pero ingat kayo sa wordings ha, kasi meron tayong mga items na similar nature pero dahil material siya, hindi mo siya pwedeng pagsama-samahin. So dapat siya dapat separate line item siya. Pero pag meron naman din tayong dissimilar items or items of dissimilar nature pero masyado namang immaterial para i-present separately, like for example, yung other current assets, 'di ba? Tas minsan naman maliliit lang 'yon, nandun yung mga office supplies na hindi naman kalakihan, tapos yung ating mga prepayments na hindi naman kalakihan. So kahit kung hindi naman siya ganun ka-material, ang nature naman niya ay current asset, di present mo na lang as other current asset. Yun yung sinasabi natin sa aggregation. Bawal ang offsetting unless pinayagan ng standard. Okay? So, pero bawal talaga offsetting. Kunyari, cash tsaka bank overdraft. Yung mga ganon. Deferred tax asset, deferred tax liability. Yan, dapat hiwalay. Okay? Frequency of reporting, ang utos po sa atin ng IAS 1 annually. Unless there is a reasonable justification to do so. Bakit kailangang shorter than 1 year? Now, always remember that a financial statement prepared shorter than 1 year ang tawag po doon is interim financial reporting. And then dapat daw po, syempre yun nga, as what we have told earlier, comparative information, and there should always be consistency in presentation. Kasi pag hindi po tayo consistent, it diminishes the quality also of comparability, and it diminishes also the understandability of the FS itself. Okay? So, kailangan po consistent ang ating presentation. Let's now talk about your balance sheet. The balance sheet reports the financial condition of the entity. Lahat po ng pinapresent natin doon ay ang kanilang economic resources, economic obligations, and equity. Basically, it is the detailed representation of your accounting equation. These are the line items provided in IAS 1 of the minimum requirements na kailangan daw po nating i-present. However, the standard also provides to us that we can include some other line items if they are material and if they would add to the understandability of the FS. For example, one line item lang po ang inventory and you can report your raw materials inventory, work in process inventory, and finished goods inventory in your notes to FS. However, if the professional judgment and discretion of the entity to enumerate your inventories on the face of the balance sheet, that's okay. Na talaga naka-report yung ating raw materials, work in process, and finished goods isa-isa dun sa ating balance sheet, wala rin pong problema. Okay? However, the standard provides us guidance na ito po yung dapat na makita sa atin pong balance sheet. Okay? So, huwag natin basahin isa-isa. If you have your IAS 1 with you, nandun naman po yan. Nakalista doon. Okay? Baka nagtataka kayo, PPE, tas investment property, tapos sa dulo yung cash. Ano po kasi yan? United Kingdom, London presentation. Ganun po kasi sila sa London, no? So on the other side naman po, nauuna yung equity, tapos non-current liabilities, tapos current liabilities. Tapos sa assets, non-current muna bago current. Ganun sila mag-present sa UK. But it doesn't change anything, no? Presentation lang. Okay? So ito naman alam na alam nyo na, si FAS pa lang, di ba? No? You will regard an asset as current if the entity expects to realize it or intends to sell or consume it in its normal operating cycle. So check nyo mabuti kung yung normal operating cycle kasi current pa rin yun kahit more than 1 year yung kanilang normal operating cycle. Okay? So huwag nyo kakalimutan yun. Okay? And also, it holds the asset primarily for the purpose of trading. Best example, your inventories. Or in any case na hindi na po siya related sa trading at hindi na rin po related sa normal operating cycle, baka po siya ay within 12 months lang, di ba? You can realize it within 12 months. Okay? Like your office supplies, mga ganon. Okay? And then the asset is a cash or cash equivalent and yung cash po mismo syempre dapat unrestricted. Okay, so diretso naman pong sinabi sa ating standard na ang current asset, kasama po talaga yung cash doon. Pero dapat unrestricted. Okay? And then sabi ng standard, lahat po ng hindi magka-qualify as current, diretso, non-current po siya. Similarly, with current liabilities, so kung ang settlement po niya is within the normal operating cycle or ang purpose po niya ay trading, current liability po yan. Or kung hindi man po siya related sa normal operating cycle, operations, or hindi rin naman po trading yung purpose, pero baka naman po ang settlement na liability is just within 12 months after the reporting period, di current liability lang din po siya. Okay? And then it does not have an unconditional right to defer settlement for at least 12 months after the reporting period. Kasi po pag nagkakaroon po tayo ng discretion to refinance, which is actually our next slide, no? Magna non-current liability na po yun. Okay? O sige, pasok na tayo doon. Ito na yun refinancing a currently maturing obligation. If an entity expects and has the discretion ha, mayroon silang discretion or right, pwede rin the right, no, to refinance or roll over an obligation for at least 12 months after the reporting period, ang presentation niya po ay diretso non-current kahit siya ay masesettle mo within a shorter period. Bakit? Kasi nga po, nagkaroon ka ng discretion or you have the discretion and the right to roll over the obligation. Okay? So magiging non-current ang presentation po natin sa ating pong mga currently maturing obligations na pwede mong i-refinance or i-roll over. Okay. However, when the refinancing or the rolling over of the obligation is not at the discretion of the entity, okay? Wala pong agreement or wala kang karapatang gawin yon, sorry. Okay? The entity does not consider the potential to refinance the obligation at diretso lang po if the obligation is currently maturing and then you classify it as a current liability again because you don't have the discretion, the power, or the right, or if it's not in the agreement that you can refinance or roll over the obligation. Okay? So, current siya. Wala kang magagawa. Currently maturing na siya, current asset. Current liability po talaga yung kanyang kapupuntahan. Ayun lang yung balance sheet. Yun yung mga important things na dapat yung tandaan. So, diretso na po ako ng ating comprehensive income. The statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income, but you can call it collectively as the statement of comprehensive income, shall present the following sections. Your profit or loss section, or yung kinasanayan nyo pong revenues, expenses, and other gains and losses. Kasama rin po dyan yung iyong tax information. So, net income before tax, and then income tax expense, both current and deferred. And that is your net income after tax. And also, don't forget, meron po tayong separate line item na pinapresent po natin yung income from discontinued operations. And then, syempre po, kasama din po yung ating total other comprehensive income, dalawang uri. Other comprehensive income that can be reclassifiable to PL in the succeeding period at saka not reclassifiable to PL. Pero yun lang naman yung dalawang categorization niya. Pero pag tinotal mo, other comprehensive income lang din naman siya. And then syempre, comprehensive income at the end of the period, which is the total of your net income here in PL and your total other OCI. Ngayon po, ang pwede po natin gawin na presentation, ganito. Pwedeng may first page po tayo na income statement lang. Tapos yung second page po natin, statement of comprehensive income. Ang endpoint mo sa income statement, net income lang. Tapos dun sa next page mo, statement of comprehensive income, ang starting point mo, yung net income mo galing sa income statement. Okay? Or pwede rin naman po, kung kasya dun sa page actually, or the entity opted to present it one whole, edi dire-diretso lang. Revenue, expense, other gains and losses, hanggang umabot yan ng net income after tax. Tapos, nandun na rin sa page na yun, kung konti lang naman din siguro yung OCI mo at kasya, edi diretsuhin mo na ang presentation hanggang mag-other comprehensive income ka na and ang endpoint mo, comprehensive income. Ang sabi lang ng standard, kung separately mo siya ipe-present, dahil may separate presentation ka na, ito yung sentence na yun dahil may separate presentation ka na ng PL, wag mo nang ipe-present doon yung PL information sa comprehensive income section. Ibig sabihin, dapat, ang starting point niya lang dapat lagi yung net income mo na galing sa PL. Okay? Parang i-adjust mo na lang sa kanya other comprehensive income items. Okay? So nagkakaintindihan po tayo Presentation-wise, yun po yung mga pwede natin gawin sa statement of comprehensive income. Ay, sobra ako. OCI. These are the items of income and expense, including reclassification adjustments that are not recognized as PL as required or permitted by IFRS. Hindi siya reportable as PL due to the restrictions of the standards, but they are still items of income and expenses. Ang tawag sa kanya, OCI, Other Comprehensive Income. Ito po ang examples natin ng Other Comprehensive Income. Wala akong magagawa kundi basahin siya sa inyo kasi yan lang naman din po yung nakalagay sa standard. Unrealized gain or loss on equity investment measured at fair value through OCI. Unrealized gains and losses on debt investments measured at fair value through OCI. Kung sakali naman pong meron kang foreign operations, gain or loss from translating the financial statements of a foreign operation. Pero later on, reclassifiable naman yan sa PL. No? Revaluation surplus during the year. Alam nyo naman na yung revaluation surplus. And then from your lessons in advanced accounting, unrealized gains and losses from derivative contracts designated as a cash flow hedge. And then yung ating pong mga transactions related to past 19 or your employee benefits were measurement of defined benefit plan. Actuarial gains and losses on PBOs or your projected benefit obligation. Okay, and then the difference between actual return on plan assets and interest income on fair value of plan assets. and change in the effect of asset ceiling minus interest on the beginning effect of asset ceiling. So lahat po yan ay naituro na sa inyo sa past 19 lesson nyo ng employee benefits. Nandun po yan. Okay? What we are talking about today is your presentation in DFS ng ating OCI. Okay. Ito naman po yung mga reclassification adjustments kasi we have two kinds of OCI. Meron po tayong reclassifiable to PL, merong not reclassifiable to PL. Yung mga reclassifiable to PL, ito po, gain or loss from translating financial statements of a foreign operation or cumulative translation adjustment. Lagi nyo lang tatandaan, when the cumulative translation adjustment has a debit balance, that is a loss. If the cumulative translation adjustment has a credit balance, that is a gain. Ulitin ko. Cumulative translation adjustment po na debit, that is a loss. Cumulative translation adjustment na credit, that is a gain. Also, you have your unrealized gains and losses on derivative contracts designated as a cash flow hedge and unrealized gains and losses on debt investments measured at fair value through OCI. Those are the OCI na pwedeng i-reclass to PL subsequently. Ito naman po yung mga not reclassifiable. Okay? Unrealized gains and losses on equity investments measured at fair value through OCI because it's reclassified diretso sa RE. Kapag ka po may pagka po in disposal na ng investment, diretso po siya sa RE. Okay? Changes in revaluation surplus, diretso rin po siya sa RE.
Kaya ba nasabi ko na?
Request lang po natin, baka meron pong naka-unmute na, ayan, okay na. Ayan. Baka po naka-unmute yung ating microphone para lang clear tayo. Okay? And then we also have remeasurements of defined benefit plan. Diretso po siya. Ang nakalagay dito is not recycled subsequently to PL but may be transferred within equity or retained earnings. So pwede nyo daw po diretso sa equity or sa RE. Pero RE is part of equity. So yun yung medyo hindi ko gets dyan sa standard. No? Kasi dadaan ka rin naman ng RE. So basically equity. And then gain or loss attributable to credit risk of a financial financial liability designated at fair value through PL. O dyan, baka malito kayo ha. Hindi porke sinabing FBPL diretso reclassifiable to PL. No, we're talking about the credit risk on it. Okay? The credit risk of a financial liability designated as fair value to PL because yung gain or loss po niya ay dinediretso yung effect sa equity or retained earnings. Okay? So, yun lang naman. Kailangan nyo i-familiarize yung sarili nyo. Baka tanongin sa exam na kung theory, which of the following other comprehensive income items are reclassifiable or not reclassifiable to PL. So baka tanungin yun sa exam. O hindi po kaya sa problems naman, how much is the OCI reclassifiable to PL? Ayan. So you need to familiarize yourself dun po sa reclassifiable at saka non-reclassifiable items. Okay? So dapat malinaw yan sa inyo. Meron po tayong dalawang way na pagpe-present po natin ng expenses. We have the function of expense method and the nature of expense method. Ito po yung actual example na binigay po sa IAS 1. Ito daw po ang presentation natin ng, ang tawag dito, natural method. Okay? Nature of expense method. Bakit po siya tinawag na nature of expense method? Kasi po, pinapresent po natin ang ating expenses sa kung ano po ba talaga siya. Depreciation ba siya? Tungkol ba siya sa employee benefits? Tungkol po ba siya sa mga inventories na nagamit natin? Ano po ba yung nature niya? Okay? Ngayon po, pagka nature of expense method, ganito lang po tatandaan nyo. Depreciation and amortization. So lahat ng depreciation, whatever its function. Depreciation ng store equipment, depreciation ng store furniture, or depreciation ng office furniture, or depreciation ng office equipment. Ang nature niya, depreciation. So wala tayong pakialam kung depreciation siya ng store area or ng office area. Depreciation siya. Pero wag niyong isasagot sa exam na baka sabihin, depreciation of factory equipment. O, Baka mamali kayo doon because under our concepts in cost accounting, that is a product cost. So baka malito naman kayo doon, mailagay nyo sa expense, 'di ba? So ingat tayo doon, no? Baka mailagay natin as expenses in your income statement. So ingat tayo sa mga ganung bagay, okay? Employee benefits expense, nandiyan lahat ng salaries mo, 'di ba? Both store selling area, distribution, at saka yung office salaries. Okay? So, ang presentation mo ng expense pag natural method, nature of expense method, ano ba talaga siya? 'Di ba? Depreciation ba siya? Employee benefits ba siya? Ganon. Unlike po sa ating pong function of expense method, by function, yung ating pong pagpe-present ng ating pong mga expenses, no? And syempre, one thing din po na talagang ma-distinguish nyo naman din talaga agad na function of expense method siya is meron po tayong presentation ng cost of goods sold. Okay? So, meron po tayong cost of goods sold talaga. Okay? So, yun po. Cost of goods sold at saka gross profit. Okay? So, yun po. Kasi yun yung function niya as cost of goods sold. Okay? Tapos po, tinan nyo mabuti. Ano naman po yung function niya? Kaya siya tinawag na function of expense method. Ano po ba yung function niya? Number one example. Siya po ay distribution cost. Ibig sabihin, lahat ng tungkol sa selling and distribution. Depreciation ng store equipment, depreciation ng store furniture, pasahod mo sa mga empleyado mo sa store. Lahat ng tungkol sa selling and distribution. Pati delivery expenses, mga ganon. So, hindi na siya naka-categorize kung depreciation ba siya or kung employee benefits ba siya. Ang pagsasama-sama mo sa kanya, ano ba siya? Paano ba siya function naman sa company? So, selling and distribution, so lahat ng tungkol sa selling area. Ito namang administrative expenses mo, edi lahat ng office expenses mo, lahat ng office salaries mo, lahat ng office depreciation mo, yun naman yung i-report mo sa administrative expenses kasi yun naman ang kanyang function. Yun yung ano niya. Kumbaga, ano bang ginagawa niya sa entity? Ano bang ambag niya, no? Distribution cost, administrative expense, no? So ganun yun lang lagi siya titignan. Pag function, distribution cost siya. So, lahat ng tungkol sa selling area or lahat ng tungkol sa distribution. Pero pag nature of expense, ano siya? Depreciation kasi siya or salaries and wages siya or siya kasi ay increase or decrease in inventory. Ganon. Okay? So, yun po yung pinagkaiba natin sa function of expense method at saka po sa nature of expense method. Okay? Baka possible ang tanongin sa exam, sa theory, yung mga ano siguro, difference ng functional natural. So, kailangan nyo rin tandaan yun. Ayun na. Tapos na ako sa ang tawag dito, tapos na ako sa income statement. So, diretso na tayo ng changes in equity. Isang slide lang to, yung ating changes in equity. Kasi wala naman tayong gano'ng pinag-uusapan doon. Ito lang po yung mga dapat yung tandaan sa changes in equity. Ito daw po, yung mga dapat nyong makita. Dapat nyong ma-present. Kayo pala yung accountant. Kayo yung magpe-prepare ng FS. Ito daw po yung mga bagay na kailangan nyo daw pong ma-present in your statement of changes in equity. First thing, the total comprehensive income for the period showing separately the total amounts attributable to owners of the parent and non-controlling interest. Kayo po ay galing na sa ABC, Accounting for Business Combination. So I don't think na hindi naman po mahirap para sa inyo i-comprehend na kung ano po yung owners of the parent and NCI. Hindi po ba? Pero ang sabi po ng standard, kailangan daw po sa statement of changes in equity, makita po yung total comprehensive income for the period. So, syempre, i-add mo siya sa equity kung net income siya, di ba? Or kung comprehensive income siya. Pero dapat, naka-present separately. Ano yung sa owners of the parent, ano yung sa NCI. Okay? Kung consolidated FS ang ginagawa under IFRS 10. Okay? IFRS 10, consolidated financial statements. Di po ba? Okay, next. For each component of equity, baka po may effect ang retrospective application due to a change in accounting policy in accordance with IAS 8. Okay? Accounting policies, changes in accounting estimates, changes in accounting policies, errors. Diba? Yan po yun. Okay. And then, for each component of equity, a reconciliation between the carrying amount of the beginning and ending amount separately as a minimum, disclosing changes resulting from profit or loss, other comprehensive income, and transactions with owners with their capacity as owners, showing separately contributions by and distribution to owners, and changes in ownership interest in subsidiaries that do not result in a loss of control. Pasimplihin natin. Di ba po, ang statement of changes in equity, beginning balance ng equity at saka ending balance ng equity po ang nakikita natin dyan. Yun po yung sinasabi dito sa standard na reconciliation. I-reconcile mo, papakita mo paano nakarating yung beginning balance sa ending balance at paano mo maipapakita na makakarating yung beginning balance sa ending balance. Ganito po siya. Siyempre, number 1, ano yung profit or loss for the period? Number 2, ano yung OCI. So, syempre, collectively, PL plus OCI equals comprehensive income. And syempre, lahat po ng contributions by owners and distribution to owners. Contributions by owners, issuance of share capital, kaya naka-receive ng finances ang company. Distribution to owners, best example, nag-distribute ka ng dividends. Ayun, yung ganon. Okay? Medyo mahirap lang yung wording sa standard pero yun lang talaga yung gusto niyang sabihin na ang kailangan lang daw po nating ma-report sa Statement of Changes in Equity, beginning and ending balance ng equity at papakita mo ano ba yung changes in equity na yun? Yung PL, OCI, contributions by owners, and distributions to owners. Yun lang. Ganun lang kasimple. Okay? So yun po yung ating discussion ng Statement of Changes in Equity. Okay, 10:00 pa lang pala. Parang ang dami ko nang nasabi. Okay. Nga pala mga kapatid, wag kayong stress na i-screenshot siya or baka meron po sa inyo nagsusulat pa ng word for word ha, tapos baka nabibilisan kayo sa slide. No, ibibigay ko po ang slides na ito sa Student Council para po maipamigay sa inyo. Even the problems later po, ibibigay po natin tong slides na ito sa inyo bilang quick notes nyo po na baka yan po ang makatulong sa inyo. Pag sinabi po kasing quick notes, baka yan yung mga pwede nyo na lang basahin before the examination. Okay? So, para makatulong po sa inyo. So, again, wag pong ma-stress na kumopya or mag-screenshot sa inyo pong mga devices, no? Kinig lang po kayong mabuti para hindi po kayo na-pressure. Kinig lang po tayo. Bibigay po natin itong slides na ito sa inyo. I will course it later through the Student Council and sila po yung magdi-disseminate sa inyo. Okay? Para umabot po sa inyo. Tapos na po ako sa Statement of Changes in Equity. Diretso na po ako ng cash flow. Sabi po sa IAS 7 ay kailangan nyo daw pong i-report ang cash flow information as an integral part of your financial statements. So walang takas, no? Kasama po siya talaga sa financial statements. Yun nga lang po, exception to the rule po kasi siya. Because the statement of cash flows is the only financial statement prepared under the cash basis of accounting. So, yung atin pong mga pinag-usapan kanina na cash basis records going to accrual basis records, babalik na rin nyo po yung konsepto. Galing ka naman sa accrual, pupunta ka naman ngayon ng cash basis. Kasi po, ang i-report po natin sa statement of cash flows is yung ating pong information na naka-cash basis. Dahil cash inflows at cash outflows, i-report po natin. And in 3 categories. Huwag pong kakalimutan yung 3 categories na yon. Operating activities, investing activities, financing activities. O, ito na yon. Isa-isahin natin. Operating activities are the principal revenue producing activities of the entity and other activities na hindi po categorizable. Is that proper English, categorizable? That cannot be categorized as investing or financing activities. Excuse me. Okay, so yun po. Bakit po ba siya, ganito po kasi, no? Bakit may ganong wording yung standard? Ang operating activities po kasi, yan lang po talaga yung related lang sa pagbebenta mo ng produkto or sa pag-render mo ng service. Bibili ka ng inventory, operating cash flow. Bibenta mo yung inventory, nakabenta ka, cash sales. Operating cash flow. Yun kasi yung iyong principal revenue producing activity. Ano naman yung sinasabi na hindi naman siya principal revenue producing activity pero hindi rin naman siya investing or financing. For example, hindi naman directly related sa operations mo kung bibili ka ng insurance o hindi, 'di ba? Yung mga prepaid insurance mo, 'di ba? Or office supplies, 'di ba? Office supplies kasi in a way, oo, nagagamit mo siya sa nagagamit mo siya sa pagre-render mo ng service or nagagamit mo siya sa operations mo. Pero hindi naman siya mismo yung binibenta mo, 'di ba? So parang hindi siya yung mismong principal revenue activity mo. Pero hindi rin naman siya investing or financing. Parang ganon, no? Kaya po nag-term ng ganon yung standard. No, pero basically, ang operating activities kasi ang basic premise niya, lahat ng nagagamit mo talaga sa operations, kaya siya operating activities, no? Pati yung tax payments. Pero later, yung tax payments pag-uusapan natin mabuti. Okay? So, yun po. Padaliin pa natin ng konti. Operating activities are those items that you can see in your PL. Okay? Yung inyo pong profit or loss section of your statement of comprehensive income. Investing activities are the acquisition and disposal of long-term assets and other investments not included in cash equivalents. Kasi po, di ba, meron tayong mga investments na part ng cash equivalents, yung mga very short-term lang na investments natin. So, part pa rin yun na operating kasi usually trading ang purpose nun di ba? Pero yung mga talagang long-term na ang asset mo, investing na po yun, okay? So, purchase of PPE, purchase of or cash outlay for your intangible assets, purchase of investments in associates, or cash outlay for investment in associate, or ano naman yung mga inflow. Proceeds from sale of equipment. Ayan. So, yun naman po yung mga nagre-relate saan? Sa mga non-current asset section po natin ng balance sheet. Okay? So, yun po. Financing activities are the activities that results in changes in size and composition of the contributed equity and borrowings of the entity. Ano naman po yung mga activities ng company para sila po ay magkapera apart from operating activities? Kasi po syempre, di ba, ang operating activities, we also get cash from that, di ba? Pinagkakakitaan din po natin yan. Pero yung financing activities, paano naman masusupport ng company yung operations nila sa finances naman nila? So, paano sila magkakapera? No? So, ang example po niyan ay tungkol po sa pwedeng contributed equity or borrowings. So, basically, that relates to your non-current liabilities like your bonds or loans o hindi po kaya equity na diretso like issuance of share capital and payment of dividends. Okay? So, yan po yung pinagkaiba ng operating, investing, and financing activities. Just to sum it up at padaliin sa inyo, lahat po ng tungkol sa PL items, at saka po current assets and current liabilities, operating activities. Investing naman po nasa non-current asset section of your balance sheet. Financing activities naman po nasa non-current liabilities and equity section ng balance sheet. Diyan nyo siya mabilis makikita para mabilis kayong makagawa ng statement of cash flow. Okay, so dalawa po ang allowed presentation natin ng operating activities. Pwede pong direct method na talagang diretsahan, sasabihin mo kung ano po yung mga transactions na nagkaroon ka ng cash inflow tsaka cash outflow. Cash proceeds from sale of inventory. Cash payments for operating expenses. Unlike po sa indirect method, you start with your PL or your net income and then magkakaroon ka na po ng mga non-cash adjustments and then your increases and decreases in working capital to get your net cash flow from operating activities. Ang pinagkaiba lang po talaga ng statement of cash flows prepared under the direct method in the indirect method is the presentation of your operating activities. Bakit? Kasi po, wala na pala dito, hindi ko pala nailagay. Kasi po, ang investing and financing activity ay talaga pong naka-direct method. So, ganito po siya. Wala pong, baka malito kayo sa theory ha. Kapag ka po, kunyari, sinabi sa problem. In the statement of cash flows prepared under the direct method, all operating, investing, and financing activities are prepared in the direct method. Ang sagot doon, true. Kasi, pag direct method, kung direct method yung operating mo, investing and financing, direct method din yun kasi wala kang may ibang choice. Direct method talaga siya. Pero pag sinabi, eto na ngayon yung twist. The indirect method of statement of cash flows includes preparation of operating activities in indirect method and investing and financing activities in the indirect method. Tapos, nagsagot ka kagad ng true. Ay, sunog ka kapatid. Mali. Mali agad. Bakit? Kahit po ang ating presentation ng operating activities ay indirect method, yung investing at financing mo po ay direct pa din. Because, ulitin ko, ang pinagkaiba lang naman po ng statement of cash flows prepared under the direct or indirect method is yung operating activity section. Yung investing at financing mo, whether direct or indirect yung operating activities mo, yung investing and financing mo, yan po ay naka-direct. Dahil wala naman po tayong ibang adjustments na pwedeng gawin para magkakaroon ka ng indirect method na investing or financing. Okay? So, yung mga ganyan na wag kayong basta-basta true, basta-basta false, ha? Baka dyan kayo mamali. Okay? Ang pinagkaiba lang po talaga ng SCF na direct or indirect method, yun lang mismong operating activities. Okay? So, sana naging malinaw tayo dyan. Foreign currency, mga kapatid. Kapag ka po nagkakaroon tayo ng effects ng foreign currency, ay hindi po siya nire-report sa operating, hindi rin po sa investing, hindi rin po sa financing. Saan? Sa baba. sa sa cash balance at the end of the period. Sa baba. Ang tawag po sa kanya, effect of exchange rate changes on cash. Okay? So if you have foreign currency, tapos may exchange rate effect siya, uulitin ko lang po, sabi ng standard, hindi daw po dapat makita sa operating, hindi rin dapat makita sa investing, hindi dapat makita sa financing. Diretso po siya sa baba. Effect of exchange rate changes on cash to get your cash at the end of the period. Okay, tandaan nyo yun ha. Eto, medyo guluhin natin yung isip nyo ng konti. Okay? Interest po and dividends. Ano po ba yung dapat gawin dito? Kasi nakasanayan nyo naman na yan na ang interest expense operating pa din kasi part siya ng PL. Tapos yung interest income tsaka dividend income, part din naman ng PL, so operating. Pwede, di ba? Pero check natin. No, yung sinabi ng standard na alternative presentation kasi may mga companies na gumagawa nito. Okay, una, interest paid or basically your interest expense and interest and dividends received. Interest income, dividend income are usually classified as operating cash flow ng financial institution. Kung ang iyong company ay isang financial institution, financial market, bangko, financial institution, yung mga interest and dividends na yan, ano sa'yo yan eh? Normal sa'yo yan eh. In fact, yan nga ang pinagkakakitaan mo at a certain point. So, operating siya. Operating talaga siya because it's one of your main revenue producing activities. Ganun po siya. Pero, eto na po ngayon. Wala po kasing sinabi sa standard na wala pong consensus kapag ka-commercial companies na hindi financial institution. Yun talagang ibang industry. Okay? Ano daw gagawin? Interest paid or your interest expense and interest and dividends received or interest and dividend income may be classified in the operating cash flow because they enter into the determination of PL. So okay lang naman na nasa operating siya. But the standard tells us an alternative presentation. Okay? Meron pong alternative presentation na sinabi sa standard. Yung interest paid po natin, pwede nyo daw pong ilagay sa financing. Bakit? Nangutang ka. Nagkapera ka. And as you know, pag may utang, at pag umutang ang company rather, they get finances. So that is a financing activity. So syempre, yung inutang ko, may interest yan. So the interest expense that is related to the borrowings that the company did can also be regarded as a financing cash flow. O, doon naman tayo dito sa interest and dividends. Interest income tsaka dividend income. Meron kang mga investments at dahil doon sa iyong mga investment, And as you know, investments in itself, from the word itself, are investing activities, right? So, dahil dun sa mga investments mo, nagkakaroon ka ng interest income or nagkakaroon ka ng dividend income dahil sa mga investments mo. So, hindi lang naman siya pwedeng i-report daw sa operating, no? Dahil yung interest income and dividend income mo daw ay galing sa mga investments mo, edi pwede mo siyang i-report din daw as investing cash flow. Okay? So, yun daw po yung alternate presentation ng interest and dividends. Ngayon, ganito. Sir, paano namin malalaman? Na ganito po yan. Kung ang isang company ay wala ka nang makikita na about interest or dividends, except for dividend, ito pala, huwag niyo kakalimutan. Ang dividend payment, financing talaga yon. Wala nang usapan doon. Dividend payments to shareholders, financing yon. Wala tayong pag-uusapan doon. Hindi naman kasi expense ng company yun, di ba? It is a distribution of corporate earnings. It's not an expense, actually. It's a reduction of your unappropriated retained earnings. Now, kung ang gusto ng company na sa operating cash flow lang yung interest expense, interest income, dividend income, edi nandun na siya sa PL, wala ka nang i-adjust. Wala. Sir, paano pag gusto na i-present sa investing tsaka financing? Tatanggalin nyo yung effect sa net income dun sa operating activities. Tapos, tsaka nyo na siya i-report separately. Yung interest expense mo nasa financing, tapos yung interest and dividend income mo nasa investing. Teka, ulit. Yung interest expense mo nasa financing pala. Yung interest expense mo nasa financing na. Yung interest income and dividend income mo nasa investing na. Para malagay mo siya sa baba, tatanggalin mo siya sa net income sa taas, sa operating. So in short, dapat tanggalin mo sa operating para mailagay mo sa investing or financing. Okay? Ganun po yun. As to taxes, operating yan. Pero ang sabi ng standard, if there are tax effects that are specifically identifiable with your investing or financing activities, dun mo siya ilalagay. But basically, the basic premise of income, or income tax rather, the basic premise of income tax is operating. So, operating lang siya. Ganon. However, again, if there is a capability for a company to really determine, not really capability, but if there is a specific identification of tax effects of investing or financing activities, doon mo siya i-report. Okay? Para mas clear yung categorization mo. Okay? And then, hindi natin naiiwasan, nagkakaroon tayo ng non-cash transactions na investing or financing activity. For example, nag-issue ka ng shares para makabili ng land. Diba? Oh. Land or purchasing land, we all know that's an investing activity. Issuance of shares, we all know that is a financing activity. But is there cash involved on it? Wala. Kasi nabili mo yung cash, shares ang binayad mo. So, syempre, hindi natin yun i-report sa statement of cash flows, pero yung mga non-cash transactions natin na gano'n, dinidisclose natin sa notes. Okay? So, disclosure po ang requirement dyan. Ito yung best example niyan, conversion of debt to equity. Meron tayong mga debt instruments na convertible to equity, di ba? O wala namang cash na kasama dyan. Pero parehon silang financing activity, di ba? Conversion of debt to equity, financing activity yan. Pero, walang cash na related sa kanya. So, disclose mo na lang siya. Okay? Yun po. And syempre, kailangan daw po ng final reconciliation. Ano po ba yung sinasabi sa statement of cash flows na final reconciliation? Ano lang yan? Yung beginning cash, tas i-add mo yung net cash flow effects ng operating, investing, financing activity to get your ending balance of cash. And remember, kung ano po yung ending balance of cash na nasa statement of cash flows, yun po dapat ang balance ng cash syempre na nasa statement of financial position. Okay, don't forget that. Pasok na po ako ng notes to FS. Ito na po yung huling part ng ating theory discussion para we can proceed na later on sa problems. 6 lang naman yung problem natin, kayang-kaya nyo yun. Okay? So, yun po. Ang notes daw po ay kailangan makapag-present ng information about the basis of the preparation of the financial statements and the specific accounting policies used. So, dinidiscuss po doon yung mga accounting policies na ginamit ng company. And then disclose the information required by IFRSs and provide information that is not presented elsewhere. Pero, Kaya po kasi tayo nag-notes to FS. Ang gusto natin mangyari, talaga magkaroon ng full understandability yung readers ng FS natin eh. So kailangan maglagay ka ng relevant information that would add sa understandability ng FS natin. Okay? So yun po. Kailangan daw po ang ating pong pagke-create ng statement of ng notes to FS ay systematic presentation. Ano pong ibig sabihin ng systematic presentation? It should be understandable and it should be comparable. Again, to achieve systematic presentation of your notes to FS, it should be understandable, it should be comparable. Okay? And required po ang cross-referencing. Ano po ibig sabihin ng cross-referencing? Kung magkano po yung amounts na ni-report mo sa face ng FS, dapat magko-correspond sa amount dun sa notes. Kung ang sinabi mong inventory sa balance sheet ay 1,200,000, pagdating sa notes to FS, dapat yung 1,200,000, yun din yung total na inventory na i-explain mo dun sa notes to FS. At syempre, ano yung components nung 1,200,000 na yun? Ipakita mo yung presentation dun sa notes to FS na ito yung laman ng 1,200,000 na inventory. Pero ang total niya, 1,200,000. So dapat naka-cross-reference. Pareho ka ng amount ng total ng inventory dun sa notes base dun sa or i-compared with the inventory na naka-report dun sa balance sheet. Okay? Yun po yung sinasabi natin cross-referencing. Siyempre, dapat re-report mo rin doon yung mga accounting policies na ginagamit ng company kasama po ng lahat ng judgments and assumptions. So, huwag niyo pong kakalimutan yan. Usually, yung mga discussions ng accounting policies sa mga nasa unang notes siya. Note 1 kasi lagi is corporate information. Note 2, significant accounting policies. Ayan, dyan nagsastart yung mga note 3, yung mga measurement basis, yung mga assessment of risks, judgments and assumptions. Kaya usually, ang cash po ay nasa note number 7 na. Kasi marami ka pa ina-explain from note number 2 to 6 about your accounting policies. Lalo na po yung mga new accounting standards na ginamit ng company, dinidisclose din po natin yon. Okay? Okay. Ito daw po yung mga other disclosures na nire-require ng standard na dapat makita. Amount of dividends proposed or declared before the FS were authorized for issue but not recognized as a distribution to owners. O, teka, padaliin natin. Di ba December 31? December 31. Tapos, meron tayong date ng authorization of FS issuance. Ito yung December 31, end of accounting period mo, nandyan po lahat ng transactions mo, to cut off mo, di ba? Pero meron tayong events after the reporting period before the issuance of the FS. Minsan po kasi nagkakaroon ng dividend declaration dyan, pero hindi pa siya nare-recognize as distributed sa owners. So, di-disclose mo yun. Kasi, ang pinupunto lang naman natin, ang FS mo hanggang December 31. So, hindi naman siya dividends as to the December 31 cut-off eh. So hindi mo talaga dapat i-report, 'di ba? Hindi siya dapat maipakita as reduction in your retained earnings. Pero dun sa gitnang portion na 'yon, na event after the reporting period, tapos before the issuance of the FS, di-disclose mo daw po kung nagkaroon ng dividend declaration doon. Pero hindi pa naipamigay ng December 31 kasi after December 31 nga daw na-distribute, na-declare. Parang ganoon. So di-disclose mo daw po 'yon. And any cumulative preference dividends not recognized. Dividends in arrears usually, mga ganon. Okay? Kasi alam nyo naman ang preference dividends, 'di ba? They are preferred sa nabigyan ng dividends kaya nga sila tinawag na preference shares eh. May mga preference sila as to certain factors eh, 'di ba? So, 'yun po. Cumulative ang dividends. So, syempre dapat talagang naibibigay talaga. Di-disclose mo kung sakaling di na-recognize. Okay? And then, kasama po sa ating note disclosures, yung domicile and legal form of the entity, country of incorporation, registered address, and principal place of business. Tapos, kwento mo naman ng konti, ano bang ginagawa ng company? Description of the nature of the entity's principal activities. Kung sakali naman pong consolidated FS kayo dahil parent-subsidiary relationship at group FS siya, the name of the parent and the ultimate parent of the group. And syempre, kung sakali man po siya ay isang limited life entity, bakit siya limited life entity at ano po yung length ng kanyang operations. And that is our discussion for theories. Dahil 10:30 pa lang, I'll be giving you a 10-minute break. So balik po tayo ng 10:40 para po sa ating problem discussion. CR break or merienda or water break. We get back again by 10:42 to 10:45. Okay? Then we proceed na po sa ating problem discussions. Thank you very much for listening and I hope that okay tayo sa theories. We can open the floor later for your questions. Hello. Can you hear me po clearly again?
Yes po, sir.
Okay, sige po, diretso ako. I received 2 questions, so sagutin muna natin. From Mark Alcazar, good morning sir. Ano pong classification ng cash set aside for bond retirement next year? Okay. Since you ulit. Since we can expect that your bond retirement will be next year na, so basically parang current na yung dating niya, no? Pero sinet aside yung cash. So ganito gagawin natin. Number 1, hindi siya cash kasi sinet aside mo. And sabi nga natin, you can only report it as cash and cash equivalents kung unrestricted. So, X na agad na cash. Okay? Pero, hindi rin naman pwedeng diretsong cash set aside for bond retirement na non-current asset kasi next year na yung transaction mo. So, it falls under other current assets. In short, current asset siya. Okay? Pero hindi siya cash diretso. At hindi rin naman siya diretsong non-current liability. Okay? Because it relates to a transaction that is due within 12 months. No? So, current siya. So, hindi siya pwedeng maging non-current. Kasi nga, 12 months. Pero, hindi rin naman siya pwedeng maging cash kasi ni-restrict mo. Did I answer your question, Mark, accordingly?
Yes daw po, sir, according sa ating chat.
Ito pala, meron pala. Yes po. Okay, that's nice. Then meron pa isang nagtanong through direct message. Okay, clarification lang po about sa refinancing. May right and discretion po si entity. Okay, so granted. Pero yung pag-extend niya po ng payment is within 12 months. Classified pa rin po ba siya under current liability? Okay. Present ko uli yung slide natin tungkol dyan para guided tayo sa sinabi ng standard. Okay. Ayan. Okay. Kita niyo yung slide? Kita niyo po ba yung slide ko?
Refinance, yung title pa lang po, sir.
Ayan. Ayan. Okay. Okay. Kasi ang tanong niya, paano daw kung meron daw yung company discretion to refinance or roll over the obligation? Yun nga lang, ang nangyari daw ay parang ang dating current na siya para magiging current na. Ang tanong niya, kung meron daw yung company the discretion to refinance or roll over the obligation, pero shorter time period na lang siya, no? I-report daw po ba as current? Ito po ang sagot dyan. If the entity expects or has the discretion to refinance or roll over an obligation for at least 12 months after the reporting period, it classifies the obligation as non-current kahit siya ay due within a shorter period. In short, hindi in this scenario, it's like an exception to the rule dyan sa 12 months na yan. Even if sa iyong pag-roll over ng obligation ay magiging due na siya within a shorter period, hindi mo siya i-record or i-report as current liability. Siya po ay idediretso mo pa rin sa non-current kasi ang titignan mo yung discretion or right or power nung company to refinance or roll over yung obligation. Okay, so whether or not more or less than 12 months, dahil ikaw ay merong refinancing or rolling over ng obligation, idediretso mo siya non-current. Yun po ang sabi sa standard. Did I answer your question accordingly po? Yes po. Thank you. Okay. Next question. Sir, what if po pag gain or loss from proceeds from sale of short-term investments? Is it operating or investment? Okay. Una, titignan mo, no, ano ba binenta mo? Short-term investment eh. And as we know, ang short-term investment ay lalo na kung ang categorization niya ay trading, talaga nasa current yan. So operating ka talaga dyan. Okay? Kasi short-term investment eh. Operating yan. No? Hindi mo siya pwedeng ilagay na investing kasi ang investing natin talagang yung mga pang long term natin eh. Okay? Did I answer your question, Erico? It's part of your PL basically. PL yan eh. Kaya operating yan. Sir, increase in unamortized premium on notes payable, increase or decrease po ba siya in determining profit? Under a capital maintenance approach. Medyo tricky yung question mo. Increase, ganito no, hindi kita pwedeng sagutin ng diretso na ay kapag ka-increase or decrease ganito. Tas, you really need to check the totality of the transaction, Mark. Eh. Kasi, ano bang dahilan bakit nagkaroon ng increase or decrease in an amortized premium na notes payable? No? Kasi kung titingnan mo yung galaw ng unamortized premium, isa sa mga effects niya, yung tungkol sa interest payable, interest expense, parang ganun, di ba? So, I cannot tell you a very direct answer na kapag ka increase ng ganito, ito mangyayari dyan sa capital maintenance approach. No, you need to take into consideration all other transactions related to it before you can use it in your capital maintenance approach. Ayan. So I hope that that answer warrants your need, Mark. No, kasi hindi siya diretsong ganon na sasalpak natin siya sa capital maintenance approach. Ayun. So did I answer your question, Mark? So yun po. Okay.
Sir, we also have questions po from the pre-registration.
Okay.
Na lang po.
Okay. Sige. After ng ating discussion.
Problem, sir. Sige.
Ayan. Yeah. Okay. So yun po. Thank you very much for your questions, guys. And let's proceed with your problem discussion. Okay, can you see my slides again, mga kapatid?
Yes po, sir.
Okay. And then can you hear me clearly?
Yes po.
Okay. And yung laser pointer, can you see it? Okay, that's awesome.
Yes po.
Diretso ako. Problem 1. 6 na problem lang naman po to, no? 2 cash to accrual, tas tigi-tigi sa doon sa mga FS. During 2021, Chexi Company acquired patent right and paid royalties of 3 million. The company reported prepayment on royalties of 550,000 and 450,000, royalties payable of 800,000 and 750,000 for December 31, 2020 and 2021. How much should be reported as royalty expense in the 2021 accrual statement of comprehensive income? So how will you be interpreting the problem? So it is cash basis expense going to an accrual basis expense. Okay? So this will be your solution for that. You get first your cash payment for royalty, which is 3 million. And then the prepayment at the beginning of the period is 550,000. You need to add that because that might be expired na at the end of the period. So add mo muna yung 550,000. Tapos, yung 450,000 naman na, ano ba to? Okay. 450,000 naman po nating ending balance ng prepaid royalty. Ang gagawin mo naman sa kanya is i-deduct mo siya. Bakit? The ending balance of your prepaid royalty is still an asset. It is not an expense. Prepayment pa siya eh. Dededuct mo kasi hindi pa po siya expense. Okay? Tapos, nag-start daw po yung taon na meron tayong royalties payable of 800,000. So, you need to deduct that because that pertains to a royalty expense last year na inabutan na lang ng accounting period na to. Ngayon mo pa lang talaga i-expect yung bayad, ay na mabayaran siya ng company rather. So that is an expense for the previous period, hindi ngayon. So ma-minus mo. Pero yung royalties payable at the end of the period, that pertains to a royalty expense this period na hindi pa bayad. So you need to add. Okay? So perform the mathematical calculation. 3 million plus 550 minus 450 minus 800 plus 750. Your accrual basis royalty expense gives you 3,050,000. Okay? So, yun po ha. Again, wag po tayong masanay, nakabisado lang ang formula. Dapat alam nyo po ang rason kung bakit. Diretso po ako ng problem 2. Christine Company collected 5 million professional fees from clients during 2021. It was ascertained at the beginning of the year, accounts receivable amounted to 800,000 and there are still 500,000 fees still unearned. By December 31, accounts receivable increased to 1,500,000 and fees still unearned is 900,000. How much will be reported as professional fees in the accrual December 31, 2021 Statement of Comprehensive Income? How will you be interpreting the problem? It's a cash basis revenue going to accrual basis revenue. And this will be your solution for that. The fees collected in cash from the customers or from your clients is 5 million. At the beginning of the year daw po, may accounts receivable na 800,000. That pertains po to professional fees in the previous period na inabutan na lang ng accounting period ngayon na hindi pa kasi siya nare-receive. You need to deduct that kasi that pertains to a previous accounting period na revenue. Inabutan na lang siyang accounts receivable at the start of the year. So hindi po siya revenue this period. You need to deduct. Okay? And then, there are still 500,000 fees that are still unearned. Unearned siya at the beginning of the period, you can assume baka sa dulo ng taon, ma-earn na natin yan eh. Kasi later on, ma-check naman natin kung unearned pa rin siya. So, i-add mo muna lahat. 500,000. December 31, accounts receivable increased to. O, check nyo mabuti yan ha. Yung increased to, tsaka increased by. So, check nyo mabuti. Increased to. So, yun na yun. Accounts receivable increased to 1,500,000. So at the end of the period, ang ending balance daw po ng AR mo, 1,500,000. And that pertains to professional fees this accounting period na hindi mo pa nga lang nare-receive yung payment ni customer. You need to add that kasi revenue mo yan this period. Okay? And then, meron ka daw pong fee still unearned na 900,000 at the end of the period. And as you know, unearned fees at the end of the period represents deferral na hindi mo pa yan na-earn. So liability pa po yan. Deferred revenue pa yan. Hindi po yan revenue, ma-minus mo po. Again, perform the mathematical calculation. 5 million minus 800 plus 500 plus 1,500,000 minus 900,000. Your accrual basis professional fees is 5,300,000. Okay. Again, wag pong ma-pressure mag-screenshot or magsulat ng notes. These slides will be given to you. I will course it through the student council to give it to you and disseminate. Problem 3 is a question about determination of the current assets and current liabilities section of your balance sheet. The following information was provided by Meow Company relating to December 31, 2021. We have bond sinking fund. One thing na dapat nyo hanapin pag may bond sinking fund is magkano yung related bonds payable niya. Okay? Sila yung magka-relate to each other. So, wag niyong kakalimutan yon. Siyempre, merchandise inventory, tsaka trade notes receivable. So, kita naman, parang current na yan, di ba? Habang tinitignan niyo yung tanong, iisipan niyo na agad ng mga ganun ha, para hindi ka nalilito. Trade accounts receivable, 7 million. Meron daw customers accounts with credit balances of 820. Nakaneto na daw. Ano kayang gagawin natin dyan later? Cash in bank na nakanet ng overdraft na 400,000. Petty cash fund na 33,000 pero may mga unreplenished petty cash expenses na 15,000. Anong gagawin kaya natin dyan? Accrued expenses of 930,000. And then we also have your short-term notes payable of 1 million. Ito na yung bonds. Bonds payable due June 30, 2022. We're talking about December 31, 2021. So, current na siya, di ba? And then, accounts payable of 4,250,000 net of suppliers accounts with debit balances of 400,000. So, mga naka-net yung mga adjustments natin. So, check natin kung paano gagawin. How much would be reported in the December 31, 2021 statement of financial position as current assets and current liabilities? I present it to you sabay kasi may mga items na i-adjust mo dito, yung iba lalagay mo sa baba or dito sa baba, lalagay mo siya sa taas. So, sabay nating isa-isahin. Okay. Bond sinking fund of 4 million is related to your bonds payable due 6 months na lang. So, kung December 31 ang ating reporting period at June 30, 2022, your bonds payable becomes current liability. So, your bond sinking fund also becomes a current asset. Okay? 4 million. Kasi yung nire-relate na bonds payable ng bond sinking fund mo, current na. So, ang gagawin mo, yung mismong bond sinking fund mo, current na din. Ganun siya. Okay? Next is your merchandise inventory of 2,560,000. We all know that is for trading purposes. Normal operating cycle, 2,560,000. Notes receivable, hindi na kayo pinahirapan, sinabi namang trade. So for the purposes of trading naman, 3,500,000, that will also form part of your current asset. Ito ngayon. Trade accounts receivable, wala naman tayong pag-uusapan dyan, 7 million. Pero nakatanggal na daw po yung customers accounts with credit balances of 820,000. Uulitin ko lang, ano po ba tong customers accounts with credit balances? Ibig sabihin, sumobra ka ng collection sa customers mo, kaya yung accounts receivable mo nagkaroon ng credit balance. So parang ang dating ngayon, ikaw pa may utang sa kanila. So ganito po yon. Huwag nyo pong i-offset. Ang gagawin nyo po, you add 7 million to 820,000 and you report your trade accounts receivable at 7,820,000. However, yung 820,000 parang ang nangyari tuloy, parang tayo pa yung may utang sa ating customers, 'di ba? Parang kasalanan ko, 'di ba? Okay. So ang gagawin natin, you separately report your 820,000 as a current liability, credit balances in customers accounts. Okay? Ganun po 'yun ha. Huwag niyo kalimutan 'yon. Cash in bank net of 400,000 overdraft. Ano nga po uli yung overdraft? Sobra na ng paglalabas ng cheque, nagne-negative balance yung account mo sa bangko. Ang gagawin mo po, wag mo rin po siyang ineneto. 6 million plus 400,000, idiretso mo ng report. 6,400,000, pero yung bank overdraft, ilagay mo po sa current liability, bank overdraft, 400,000. May petty cash fund ka daw pong 33,000 pero may 15,000 unreplenished petty cash expenses. So before the year end or yung mismong year end, syempre naman, adjust mo na. Okay? Para ma-record na ng tama yung expenses. 33 minus 15, petty cash fund, 18,000. Okay? Accrued expenses, wala na tayong pag-uusapan dyan. That is a current liability. No? So ito po siya. Accrued expenses, 930,000. Short-term notes payable, di na kayo pinahirapan. Sinabi namang short-term yung notes mo. So short-term notes payable, 1 million. Bonds payable, so unang basa, bonds payable, non-current. Pero tingnan mo yung due date. June 30 na lang, so dapat siya po current na. So dapat bonds payable, current, 4 million. O ito naman, accounts payable, 4,250,000 pero suppliers accounts po natin may debit balances. Sumusobra naman po tayo ng payments natin sa suppliers. May receivable tayo sa kanila. May i-expect tayo ma-receive galing sa kanila. Wag nyo po inineto. Re-add uli. 4,250,000 plus 400,000. Your accounts payable should be reported at 4,650,000. Pero yung debit balances in supplier accounts, which works like a trade account receivable, is 400,000. Kasi receivable yan eh. So, i-report ko siya separately, 400,000. If you are done with these categorizations, you just get the total. Your current assets is 24,698 and your current liability is 11,800,000. Okay? I suggest po sa pagsasagot po ng mga ganitong problem, babasahin nyo lang muna yung unang sentence. The following information was provided by Mail Company relating to December 31, 2021. Then proceed ka sa tanong agad. Para pag binasa mo yung given, alam mo kung ano yung hinahanap mo. Paano kasi kung bigyan ko kayo ng sangkatutak na ganito sa exam? Tapos, ang tanong lang pala, how much would be reported as accrued expenses in the current asset section of the balance sheet? Nagsayang ka pa ng oras basahin. Ito lang siya, yung 930,000. Okay? So, laging babasahin muna yung main question stem ng problem para na-segregate na ng mata mo kung ano yung kailangan mong information. Pero, ingat din sa ganong technique. Kasi, baka meron nakalagay sa problem na kailangan mo palang i-analyze, sinegregate agad ng mata mo, hindi mo nakita. So, babalansehin nyo yung ganong technique ng mabuti. Problem 4 tayo. The following information was provided by the Raymond Company. Calculate for your net income, total other comprehensive income, and total comprehensive income. Huwag kayong malilito sa TOKI tsaka sa TCI. Total other comprehensive income tsaka total comprehensive income. Yung total other comprehensive income, yung mismong OCI mo lang yon na total effect. Yun na yun. Yung total comprehensive income, yan yung PL at saka OCI effects mo. Ibig sabihin, yung endpoint ng statement of comprehensive income mo. Okay. Binigyan kayo ng revaluation surplus, income from continuing operations, income from discontinued operations, unrealized gain on financial assets at FBPL, tapos credit risk at FBPL, tapos unrealized loss on equity investments FBOCI, debt investments FBOCI, unrealized gain on futures contract designated as a cash flow hedge, net remeasurement gain on defined benefit plan, and cumulative translation adjustment. Okay? Pero sinabi naman ng gain, so hindi nyo naaalamin kung naka-debit or credit kasi sinabi naman na gain. So alam na natin credit balance yan. Question number 1, how much is your net income? Ganito lang po yan kasimple. Your income from continuing operations of 5,650,000 and your income from discontinued operations of 460,000, all of those after tax. Dapat, okay? Net income is 6,110,000. How much now is your total other comprehensive income? So, kukunin mo lang yung information dito. Ano yung mga OCI mo? Okay? Ito na. Revaluation surplus for the year, 1,800,000. Unrealized gain on financial assets at fair value through PL. Oops. Dahan-dahan. Unrealized gain on financial assets at FBPL. Oops, saan po nire-report to? Nasa PL section po yan. So anong gagawin natin? Nandun na siya sa loob nung income from continuing operations. Okay? Bakit po siya nandun na sa loob? Kasi po yung mga ganyang unrealized gain on financial assets at FBPL, kasama na po siya sa other income and expenses portion ng income statement mo. So nandun na siya dun sa loob ng continuing operations. Okay? Loss on credit risk of a financial liability at fair value through PL, kasama po yan. Loss kaya pa minus ha, wag malilito sa ganun. Unrealized loss on equity investments at FBOCI, syempre. Loss, negative 900,000. Debt investments at fair value through OCI, pero gain, so syempre pa-add 700,000. Unrealized gain on futures contract designated as a cash flow hedge, so add din po natin yon. Remeasurement gain on defined benefit plan, gain po, add natin. And translation gain on foreign operation, add din po natin. Wag mo munang i-add sa net income, ang tinatanong pa lang sa inyo, TOKI. Total other comprehensive income. Ibig sabihin, yung mismong mga OCI items lang muna, 2,340,000. Huwag na kayong magsayang ng oras sa problem solving kung hindi naman pinapasegregate sa problem, kung reclassifiable to PL in the subsequent period or kung non-reclassifiable sa PL. No? So wag niyo nang sayangin yung oras niyo i-segregate kung di naman pinapasegregate. Kung alam niyo yung item ay OCI at tinatanong lang naman sa inyo ay total OCI, ay dilista mo na lang lahat ng OCI para tapos problema mo. Okay? Wag niyo na siyang i-segregate kung hindi naman pinapasegregate. Okay? So pag nakuha niyo na yung 1 and 2, madali na lang yung number 3. Your total comprehensive income is just the sum of your net income, PL section, and then TOKI, total other comprehensive income, pagadin mo lang and you get 8,450,000. O, di ba? Madali lang ang madali lang ang updates, di ba? O, ganyan, ganyan lang yun. Kaya nyo yan. Okay? Diretso tayong problem 5, mga kapatid. This is an equity question. Oops, nabasagan. Therese Group and subsidiaries have the following information related to its consolidated financial statements. Mga kapatid, pag nakabasa kayo ng question na consolidated yung FS, check nyo ha, baka may tanong about equity owners of the parent tsaka NCI. No? Pero hindi naman yun yung focus ng UFRS. Ang focus po kasi ng updates in FRS na subject is yung proper presentation po natin ng FS. So hindi naman po namin kayo tatanungin dito ng sobrang lala na tanong na pang accounting for business combination na parent subsidiary tsaka equity parent at tsaka NCI. So hindi na tayo dadaan sa ganun. No? So medyo hindi ganun kabigat yung mga tanong naman na mag-a-advance accounting tayo. Kasi ang questions natin dapat dito sa UFRS is more on the proper presentation of an FS because this is a constructive accounting class. Okay? So yun po. But in any case, maka-encounter kayo ng ganitong question o at least alam nyo how it works. Diba? Ganito po. Consolidated financial statements as atin for the year ended December 31, 2021. Equity on on non-controlling interest, binigay naman na agad, diretso, 31,655,547. Information attributable to the parent company are as follows. Treasury stock, credit balance of cumulative translation adjustment, remeasurement loss on defined benefit plan, stock options outstanding, retained earnings, and paid-in capital. How much total equity will be reported in the 2021 Conso FS? Ang tanong po sa atin ay Conso FS. So, dapat po, ang total equity mo, pareho. Equity ng parent at saka NCI. Kasi ang tinatanong Conso FS eh. Buo. Group FS. Buo talaga. So, ganito po siya. As to parent, lista mo lang, paid-in capital, 62,772,446. Stock options outstanding na 42,279. Tapos yung retained earnings na 149,83,777. Tsaka yung mga OCI components mo na ina-adjust natin sa equity, syempre kasama yon. Remeasurement loss on defined benefit plan, negative kasi loss, so huwag kalimutan, 794,568. Cumulative translation adjustment, hindi sinabi kung gain or loss, pero sinabi credit, so gain. Okay? So pa-add siya. 254.40. Treasury stock at cost, alam nyo naman na yan, dinededuct natin yan sa equity, negative 110,4,353. So attributable to parent is 211,50,21. Add nyo po si equity on non-controlling interest na 31,655,547 kasi ang tanong po sa inyo, Conso FS. So the total shareholders equity of the group is 242,705,568. Okay? So yun po yung ating problem 5. Diretso na po tayo sa ating last problem, statement of cash flow. The following information was made available by Dahyun Company. Calculate the net cash flow from operating, investing, and financing activities and your ending cash balance. Basically, the question is a cash flow preparation question. Pero syempre, as to multiple choice, hindi naman kayo mapapagawa ng cash flow. So, i-analyze na lang natin siya as if para tayong gumagawa ng cash flow. But the questions will just be independently about operating, investing, and financing activities and the ending cash balance. This is your ang tawag dito, operating activities. Okay. You start with your net income of 8 million. And then, indirect method to mga kapatid ha. So, syempre, re-add po natin yung ating non-cash expenses depreciation and amortization of 1,500,000. Tapos later po kasi nakita natin may makikita tayong sale of equipment eh. Alam naman po natin na ang sale of equipment, ang effect po dapat niyan ay nasa investing activity. So yung effect ng gain ay tatanggalin mo sa net income para hindi siya maging part ng operating. Kasi later on din naman, yung mismong buong amount ng proceeds from the sale of equipment, i-add mo sa investing. So doon na lang natin lagay lahat. So yung effect ng gain, dapat matanggal mo sa net income. Okay? So perform that and you get 9 million operating income before working capital changes. Nag-increase daw po ang accounts receivable. Ibig sabihin, hindi pa tayo nakakakolekta ng cash. So that is presumed as a cash outflow. Negative. Nag-decrease ang inventory. Ibig sabihin, nakabenta tayo. Diba? Bumaba yung bumaba yung inventory eh. So nakabenta tayo, 'di ba? Cash flow natin 'yon, cash inflow 'yon. So add mo. Okay? Nag-increase ang ating accounts and notes payable. Nag-increase ang utang, hindi pa tayo nakakabayad, para siyang cash inflow, add mo. Income tax payable, bumaba. Bumaba yung income tax payable mo. Ibig sabihin, nagbayad ka ng tax, para siyang cash outflow, pa-minus mo. Okay? Pero, yun yung mga reason ha. Dapat alam niyo yung ganung reason. Pero, kabisote style, pero sabi ko nga sa inyo, ayoko kayong ganun. Increase in current asset is deducted. Decrease in current asset is added. And then, increase in current liability is added and decrease in current liability is deducted. Okay? So, yun yung technique natin. Pero dapat naiintindihan nyo kung bakit. Okay? So, that will be your net cash flow from operating activities, 10 million. We proceed with your your investing. So lahat lang po ng transactions dito tungkol sa long-term assets, which is your purchase of equipment for cash. Lalagay mo siya na negative 7 million. Minsan may mga nalilito dyan. Remember, cash flow po ito. So yung iba kasi ang thinking, purchase of equipment for cash ay positive kasi nagkaroon ng asset yung company. Hoy, hindi po ito accounting one. Remember, bumili ka ng equipment. Ano ba pinambayad mo? Cash. So meron kang cash outflow, negative 7 million. Tapos ito po yung sinasabi ko kanina na proceeds from sale of equipment, dapat po yung buong effect ng proceeds ay nasa investing activity. Kaya tinanggal natin yung gain dun sa operating activities. Okay? So just get the sum and your net cash flow from investing activity is negative 5 million. Financing naman po lahat ng tungkol sa borrowings, long-term liabilities, and equity. Okay? Increase in long-term debt. Pag nag-increase ang debt, ibig sabihin, umutang ka, so nagkaroon ka ng cash, kasi umutang ka, so 5 million pesos. Purchase of treasury shares, as you know, the entry is debit treasury shares, credit cash. So cash outflow po yan na financing, negative 1 million. And then proceeds from issuance of share capital, nag-issue ka ng shares, nakatanggap yung company ng cash, positive 4 million. And then, payment of a cash dividend is negative 2,500,000. Okay, and remember, napag-usapan na natin yan kanina, ang cash dividend payment ay talagang diretsong financing. Wala po tayong adjustment dyan. Yung pinag-usapan lang natin kanina is dividend income galing sa investment na pwede daw pong either part ng operating or ng iyong investing. Di ba? Pero dividend payment mo po ay diretso sa financing. Okay? So, ganun po yon. So pag tinanong po kayo ng ending cash balance, edi kunin mo lang po yung net cash flow. 10 million minus 5 million plus 5.5, net cash flow is 10,500,000. And then that is and then add nyo po si beginning balance ng cash and you get your ending balance of cash of 16,500,000. Basically, questions about cash flow will just be asking you to properly categorize things as to operating, investing, and financing activities and how you will be able to transform your balance sheets into cash flow information. Yung mga increase, decrease, and yung mga madalas lang naman nating itanong sa cash flow. Okay, yun lamang po ang aking discussion and thank you very much. Again, I will be giving you the slides through the Student Council and I am now opening the floor for your questions.
Guys, you can raise your hand or chat or unmute in our meeting.
Pero
Siguro sir,
unahin natin yung Unahin natin yung
Tutorial questions.
pre-tutorial questions.
Sige po, sir.
Oo.
Bali,
Hindi
yung
ako
una
ready
po,
dyan, Joke lang. Sige,
yung una pong question,
proper interpretations and making them easy for you to understand. Okay, so yun yung technique natin doon. But if you will be asking me na how to really grasp the information in the accounting standards, there's no other way on that but to read the accounting standards themselves. Mga kapatid, tungkol nga po pala sa accounting standards, I revisited www.ifrs.org. Hindi na po yata available yung mga PDF. Talagang nakasalpak na dun sa website yung mismong accounting standards. So kung gusto nyo po ng accounting standards na access, you really need to create an account. Free account lang naman si ifrs.org. Yun nga lang, you need to create an account para ma-access nyo yung unaccompanied standards. Pero hindi na yata siya naka-PDF. And wag po kayong basta-basta magbabasa ng PDF ng accounting standard na binigay ng friend nyo. Kasi baka po siya ay lumang version dahil madalas pong magbago at may mga current developments pa po tayong ine-expect. So wag pong magbabasa basta-basta ng PDF copy ng standard kasi po baka na-revise na siya. Not necessarily superseded pero baka po siya ay na-revise na. Okay? Yung IAS 1 ngayon, kaka-revise lang yan eh. Nagulat din ako sa mga bagong nangyari dyan. So yung pinresent ko sa inyo ngayon, yung mga new changes in IAS 1. Yun po.
Yun lang naman, sir, yung from the pre-tutorial questions. So yung
Okay.
mga may questions po dito
Yung
sa
mga
Zoom.
may questions po, pwede kayong mag-unmute. Or pwede rin kayong mag-on ng cam para makita naman namin kayo. Or you can also type it in the chat box po. Sige, type muna kayo. Baka mga nagta-type kayo.
Siguro, sir, we'll give them 2 minutes po.
Okay,
If
go.
ever wala po.
Kasi kung wala magtatanong, magti-tips na lang ako sa exam.
Yun, sir. Siguro po pwede nyo nang i-share po yung tips if ever habang nagpa-formulate po sila ng questions.
Mag-aral kayo mabuti. Yun ang tip ko. Hindi, joke lang. Your midterm examination would cover cash to accrual basis of accounting, statement of financial position, statement of comprehensive income, statement of changes in equity, cash flows, and notes. Interim reporting and reporting segment was originally part of the syllabus for the midterm examination. Inalis namin, nilagay namin sa finals. Things to expect. Wala pa yung tanong sa akin, hindi ko pa nakita. So huwag kayong umasa ng tips ng tanong mismo. Tsaka bawal ko rin naman gawin yon. Pero ano lang naman, dun sa problem solving, number 1 yan, ito po ha. Ang madalas lang naman po kasing itanong kapag ka po cash to accrual basis is really the content na pinag-usapan natin kanina. So malamang kailangan nyo talagang aralin yung mga galing sa cash operating expenses going to accrual operating expenses o hindi po kaya yung ating mga cash basis revenue to accrual basis revenue, tapos cash basis sales to accrual basis sales, yung mga ganun po. So yun yung paghandaan nyo kasi yun naman yung mga talagang madalas itanong. For the statement of financial position, ang basic level na dapat alam nyo na dyan by now is yung proper segregation po natin ng current assets, non-current assets, current liabilities, non-current liabilities, and equity. Kasi galing naman na kayo sa IA 123 para magawa yun ng maayos. Ngayon po, kung meron man po kayong kailangang paghandaan na mga challenging questions on the balance sheet, yun po yung mga questions na may given, may adjustments. Ayun. So, kailangan nyo rin pong paghandaan yun. Yun yung mga siguro mga lalabas na ganun naman lagi ang tanungan pag balance sheet eh. Kasi basically, naka-multiple choice tayo. And even in the board exam, you will not be asked for a full FS, no? So, on a multiple choice type, syempre medyo magiging selective yung tanungan like how much is the non-current liabilities, di ba? Ganun lang naman, no? So, on a basic level, ganun. Pero pagdating, so if you need to prepare for hard questions, I suggest dun kayo mag-focus. Yung may given, tapos may adjustment. So, gagamitin nyo yung knowledge nyo talaga ng IA 1, 2, and 3 for that. Kunyari, ito yung may binigay na trial balance or may binigay na given, tapos nakalagay, the entity owns 25% or 20% ownership in an associate. So, pasok ka na ngayon sa konsepto ng investment in associate under equity method. Yung ganon. Di ba? O di po kaya binigyan kayo ng asset information about PPE. So, syempre, yung mga bagay na wag nyo nang kakalimutan. Yung mga depreciation effects niya, yun. So, yun. Basically, ganun, no? Bonds payable, baka tanungin kayo ng mga adjustments as to premium or discount amortization. So, yun. Babalikan nyo yung mga ganun. So, if you need to prepare for hard questions for the statement of financial position, yung may given na may adjustments. No? Tapos, ang mga tanong doon is how much is the total assets na? O di po kaya how much is the total non-current asset, current asset. So, ganun din yung tanong pero may adjustment siya. Okay? Okay, sige. Ito muna. How about discontinued operation? May need po ba kaming basahin about dun for the midterm? Okay. Ang focus kasi ng discussion about discontinued operations is, ang sabi kasi sa standard, you will just provide one line item in the income statement about income from discontinued operations. Pero hindi pa po kasi namin natuturo sa inyo kung paano mag-compute ng income under discontinued operations talaga. Pero depende sa prof nyo, baka naturo na talaga. Ngayon, kung sakali man, paghandaan nyo na rin. Kasi kung meron kayong libro ni Ma'am Robles na ganito, nandito yata, meron yata dito. So if you really want to prepare for the income statement, baka magtanong. Kasi di ko man alam yung tanungan pa eh. Hindi naman kasi ako yung gagawa ng exam. So, ayun. Kung sakaling tungkol sa discontinued operations, medyo paghandaan nyo na din kung sakali. Yung tungkol sa discontinued operations. And with that given, income statement naman tayo. So, what are the usual things na dapat yung paghandaan for the income statement? Pag ang tanong naman po ay income statement tsaka statement of comprehensive income, medyo madali in a sense that alam nyo na mag-compute ng income eh. 'Di ba? So kung ang tanong ay PL, that's a no-brainer for you guys na eh. Kaya nyo na yun eh, 'di ba? Yun nga lang, ingat kayo sa categorization kasi baka magtanong ng how much is the total revenue, total expenses, tapos other income and expenses. So syempre, wag nyong isasama yung mga peripheral gains and losses sa revenue or yung mga other gains and losses sa expenses. Baka mamali kayo. Yung mga ganun. So, you focus maybe more on the categorization. Kasi kung net income ang kukumputin, kaya nyo na yun eh. No-brainer na sa inyo, revenue minus expense minus tax. Ganun lang, di ba? Pero maybe on the categorization. Tapos doon naman po sa OCI, ayun. So, aralin nyo na mabuti, baka magtanong ng reclassifiable tsaka not reclassifiable to PL. So, pero yun nga, sabi ko sa inyo kanina, kung hindi naman po pinapa-segregate ng ganun at total OCI lang naman ang tanong, you just determine in the given kung ano yung OCI. Yun na po yun. Okay? Pag statement of changes in equity, balikan nyo po kung paano mag-compute ng tamang total equity on a corporate perspective. No? Corporation. Kasi syempre parang hindi naman na kami magtatanong ng partnership siguro dito. 'Di ba? Yung mga ganong equity. At lalo naman sole proprietorship, pakadali naman nun. No? Pwede siguro may lalabas pa rin tanong about sole proprietorship, pero alam nyo na yun, 'di ba? Kung meron man kayo sigurong kailangan paghandaan po sa statement of changes in equity ay yung corporate type talaga, no? Na contributed capital, retained earnings, yung inyo pong legal capital, additional paid-in capital, tsaka yung mga contra equity accounts nyo like non-current subscription receivables, at tsaka po yung inyong treasury shares. Okay? At tsaka syempre, don't forget, kasama, dahil medyo integrated na po yung ating subject dito, kasama ang OCI effects sa equity. So baka makalimutan nyo yun, di ba? Kasi as you know, ang net income na ipasok na sa retained earnings, at yung syempre, tas 'di ba nakakita na kayo ng equity na 'di ba, pang corporate, talagang column by column siya. So pati yung OCI effects dapat pasok doon. Okay? And then to answer questions about your cash flow, sabi ko nga po sa inyo kanina, learn to properly categorize what operating, investing, and financing activities are. Okay? Kasi malamang naman ganun at ganun lang ang tanungan dito. At kung hihirapan man yung tanong, syempre ang ibibigay sa inyo, balance sheet with other information. Ganun lang naman yun eh. Balance sheet, ito yung other information, tapos compute for the operating, investing, and financing activities. So those are my tips on how to properly prepare for the midterm examination for updates in FRS. Yun lang po. So kung meron pa pong tanong, pwede kayo mag-open nga po ng inyong microphone or pwede nyo i-type yung inyong question. Pero parang wala na nga may tanong. So yun po.
So kung ganun sir, we would like to thank you po for your participation and your your facilitating this tutorial. So to to present our gratitude, I would like to award you our certificate of appreciation. So ito po, let me read the content. Republic of the Philippines, Polytechnic University of the Philippines, College of Accountancy and Finance Student Council, AY 2020-2021. Certificate of Appreciation is awarded to Professor Kevin Troy M. Chua, MACY, CPA, CPP, CTT, in recognition of your valuable contribution as one of the honored facilitators in CAF Review tutorials, May 13 to 17, 2021 via Zoom conference call, given this 13th day of May, in the year of our Lord 2021, signed by Aaron S. de los Reyes, Counselor, Head Academics Department, Aaron Paul M. Garing, Student Council President, noted by Professor Mark Anicito R. Perlas, CPA, Student Council Advisor, and Professor Julieta G. Fontes, CPA, PhD, Dean of College of Accountancy and Finance.
Thank you very much po. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much po sa ating Student Council for entrusting me yung atin pong UFRS final coaching classes. Thank you also to Sir Mark Perlas for having me here. And also maraming salamat po again for trusting me po sa inyo pong tutorial session today. It's really nostalgic kahit online. Kasi yun nga po, sabi ko sa inyo, I have already been doing this. Estudyante pa lang ako, no? Na tutorial na ako. Estudyante pa lang ako. And now that I'm now teaching in PUP, I was able to do it again for students. So thank you very much po. Maraming salamat. Saka plug ko na rin pa-subscribe naman po. Search was Accounting Lessons PH. Nandun po yung ating pong lessons. So kung hindi nyo po na-visit, actually I have videos there po for updates in FRS. Nandun po lahat from cash to accrual hanggang current lesson po natin, which is the statement of cash flows. Yun po. Thank you very much po. Maraming salamat.